I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, laying it all out because I honestly need some perspective. My name's Jason, and I've been with my wife Amber for about 7 years now. We got married pretty young, and for a long time everything seemed fine, or at least I thought so. She was a little bitchy at times, always snapping about small things, but I figured it was just her personality. We had our routines, a cozy little life, and a new puppy named Max that we adopted last year. Things felt normal, even good, until I started noticing some weird shifts in her behavior. At first, it was little things. She started working late more often, claiming it was just her job. Then she'd come home looking more tired, and she'd be quick to brush off my questions about where she'd been. She'd be more secretive about her phone, hiding it when I got near, changing her passwords and deleting texts or messages. I didn't want to be paranoid, but it was obvious she was hiding something. I even caught her in a couple of little lies that didn't quite add up, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Still, a nagging feeling kept growing in my gut that something was off. Then came the biggest hint. I installed a puppy cam in our living room, mostly to keep an eye on Max when I was at work or away. I figured it'd help us catch any puppy mischief, or just let me see how Max was doing during the day. I never expected what I saw on that camera would change everything. One evening, I decided to check the footage because I'd noticed Amber acting weird around that time. At first, I wasn't really suspicious, just curious, maybe a little bored. What I saw made my stomach drop. It wasn't Max causing trouble, it was Amber. There she was in the middle of the living room wearing a tight tank top and yoga pants, her hair messy but her face flushed. And she was kissing our dog trainer. Yeah, I know how crazy that sounds, but there it was. She was leaning into it, going at it like she was in some sort of reckless frenzy. The trainer, a guy named Ryan, was on the other side of the room, doing the same. I could see their hands all over each other, his hands on her waist, her fingers tangled in his hair. It was raw, passionate, and disgusting. They weren't just flirting, they were full-on cheating. I watched as they kissed, touched, and then I swear I saw her slip her hand into his jeans. The worst part is that I'd always trusted Amber. She'd complain about my late nights, say I wasn't giving her enough attention, but I never thought she'd cheat on me with our own dog trainer. I mean, who does that? But there it was, right in front of my eyes. I didn't want to believe it at first. Maybe it was a sick joke, an accident, or some kind of misinterpretation. I rewound the footage a dozen times, trying to tell myself I was wrong, that I was overthinking. But every time I watched, it was painfully clear. This wasn't just some harmless flirtation, this was full-blown betrayal. I was numb. My mind was racing, trying to process what I just saw. My wife, the woman I married, who I thought I knew, she was unfaithful. Not just unfaithful with some random guy, but with a man we used to trust in our own home. That night I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. All I could do was replay the footage and wonder how she could do this. How she could betray me with someone we both knew and, worse, use our dog as a cover. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get cheated on, especially so blatantly, but here I was, staring at what felt like my entire world crumbling. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind kept circling around that footage, replaying every moment of Amber and Ryan's sick little rendezvous. I couldn't believe she'd do it in my own house, in plain sight, like she didn't even care anymore. The betrayal hit me harder than I expected, and I was furious, hurt, and honestly a little confused. How could she lie so easily? How could she look me in the eye every day, pretend everything was fine, and then do this behind my back? I spent the morning trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew better. I needed a plan, something clear and rational. I couldn't just blurt out what I knew without being prepared for her reaction. But I also couldn't keep it bottled up. Every time I looked at Max, I'd think about how this was happening in our home, in our life together. It wasn't just some secret affair. It was an outright slap in the face. I waited until she came home from work, trying to keep my composure. She breezed in the door, acting casual as if nothing had happened. That's when I decided I'd finally confront her. I pulled her aside in the living room, my heart pounding. "Amber," I said, trying to sound calm but firm, I saw the footage. I saw what you did with Ryan last night." Her eyes widened, and for a second I thought she might deny it. Instead, she rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh, come on, Jason, you're overreacting. It's not what it looks like." I wasn't about to let her brush it off. "No, Amber, it's exactly what it looks like. You cheated on me. With Ryan in our house, and you used Max as some kind of cover. Don't even try to lie your way out of this." Her face turned sour and she crossed her arms. "You're crazy. You're paranoid. I don't know what you saw, but you're imagining things. Ryan wouldn't do that, and I'd never cheat on you." That was when I realized she was straight up lying, and worse, she was trying to gaslight me, like I was supposed to believe I was losing my mind. I looked right into her eyes and told her to stop. I told her I had the footage, that I knew she was screwing around behind my back, and that I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine anymore. Her face twisted into something nasty, like she was angry or maybe even scared. But she kept insisting she was innocent, that I was jealous and insecure, and that I was making a huge mistake. I didn't know what to feel at that moment. I was angry, yes, but also deeply hurt, like someone had torn a part of me out and stomped on it. The woman I trusted, the woman I loved, had betrayed me so openly that I could no longer pretend I didn't know. I told her she needed to leave. I told her I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. And I told her I was done pretending. The moment she packed her bags and left, I felt a strange mix of relief and devastation. Relief that I finally knew the truth, but devastation because I realized I'd lost my wife. I couldn't believe she'd do this to us, especially with Ryan, someone we both trusted as an authority on training Max. It felt like my entire life had turned upside down in just a few hours. I kept looking at Max, who was totally oblivious to the chaos, and wondered how we got here. How someone I loved and trusted could turn into this stranger, this liar, this cheat. And what the hell I was supposed to do now. After Amber left, I didn't know what to do with myself. The house suddenly felt colder, emptier, like the walls were closing in. I spent the first few days in a fog, sleeping sporadically, eating even less, and just replaying everything I saw on that damn camera. It was like my mind refused to accept the reality, even though my gut screamed at me that I'd been blind for too long. I tried to convince myself that maybe there was some explanation, some misunderstanding, but deep down I knew that was wishful thinking. I reached out to a friend, Mike, who's been through his own share of relationship hell. I needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge me. I told him everything. The footage, Amber's lies, her denials. And honestly, I expected him to tell me to walk away, to close that chapter of my life. Instead, he looked at me with a mixture of shock and anger and said, "Man, you've got to confront her again. There's no way she's going to come clean without some sort of push. You need to find out what her real game is." That night, I decided I couldn't just sit around anymore. I set up a little hidden microphone in the living room, just to catch whatever she might say when she thought I wasn't around. I also kept the puppy cam rolling, just to see if she'd slip up again. I was terrified, honestly, but I also felt a strange sense of purpose. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by doing nothing. A few days later, I got the confirmation I'd feared. Amber came home late one night, obviously drunk, and started talking on the phone with a voice I didn't recognize. I pressed record and stayed hidden behind the door. That's when I heard her say Ryan's name multiple times, giggling and whispering about the fun they'd been having. She even told whoever she was talking to that she was planning to see Ryan again that weekend, and she made some crude comments about their sex life. Hearing those words made my stomach turn. It was one thing to see her kiss him on camera, but hearing her openly talk about their sex life, her lying so freely, that was a whole new level of betrayal. She didn't even care who knew anymore. She was proud of what she was doing, and that made me feel sick. I realized I'd been an idiot to trust her, to even give her the benefit of the doubt. She was doing this with no shame, no remorse, right under my nose. That night I sat alone in the dark, feeling a mix of anger and despair. I kept asking myself how. I'd been so blind, so naive. I thought maybe I could forgive her if she'd just come clean and apologize, but it was clear she didn't see her actions as wrong. She was justifying it in her mind, calling me insecure or jealous or whatever bullshit she needed to convince herself that she hadn't done anything terrible. Honestly, I felt humiliated, betrayed, and deeply hurt. I'd given her everything, my time, my love, my trust, and she'd thrown it all away for some fling with Ryan. I kept thinking about what to do next. Part of me still wanted to save the marriage, to fix what I thought could somehow be fixed, but another part knew that trust, once broken like this, was nearly impossible to rebuild. I wasn't sure if I'd ever look at her the same way again. My mind kept circling around one idea. I needed to get revenge, not just for myself, but to make her see that she couldn't just cheat and walk away like it was nothing. That's when the seed of a plan started forming in my head, a way to make her regret every lie she told, every sneaky thing she did. I knew I'd have to be smart about it. I didn't want to just blow up everything without thinking. I wanted her to feel the pain of her betrayal, to see it reflected back at her. I had to show her that I wasn't going to be the fool she thought I was. That's what kept me up that night, planning my next move. I didn't know how far I'd go yet, but I knew I was done being the one betrayed and humiliated. I owed her at least that much, an ending she'd never forget. The days that followed were pure chaos inside my head. I kept replaying everything I knew: Amber's lies, her secret calls, her reckless cheating. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. If she thought she could just cheat and lie her way out of everything, she had another thing coming. I made up my mind. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her humiliate me. I needed to do something that would hit her where it hurt, something she would never see coming. I started gathering evidence, more than just the footage. I set up hidden cameras around the house, especially in places she'd go when she thought I wasn't around. I also went through her phone, trying to find any more proof of her affair with Ryan. It wasn't hard. She was careless about deleting messages sometimes, and I found more incriminating texts and pictures. It was disgusting, honestly. The woman I married, the one I loved, was out there screwing around with our dog trainer, and she thought she could get away with it. But I didn't want to just confront her again. I wanted her to see that I knew everything. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal. That's when I decided I'd turn her own game against her. I set up a plan to make her believe I was doing something even worse. I started acting cold, distant, like I didn't care anymore. I played along with her lies a little longer, pretending I was clueless about her affair. I stopped asking questions, stopped pushing her. Instead, I acted like I was planning something, waiting for the right moment to strike. One afternoon, I called her and told her I wanted to meet up and talk. She was surprised, maybe even a little nervous, but she agreed. When she arrived, I was waiting in the living room with all the evidence laid out on the table. I knew I'd caught her with Ryan's messages, so I used those to confront her directly. I told her I knew everything about her secret calls, her sneaking around, her cheating with Ryan in our own home. Her face twisted in anger, and she started denying everything again, calling me paranoid and crazy. But I didn't care. I threw the phone with all the messages on the table and told her, "Look at this. You did this. You betrayed our marriage for some trainer who's nothing but a piece of shit." Her eyes flashed with rage, and she spat back, "You don't know what you're talking about. This is all just a misunderstanding. You're overreacting." I wasn't having it anymore. I told her I'd had enough of her lies, enough of her fake face. I told her I was done being your fool, that I was going to make her pay for what she did. I wanted her to feel the shame, the guilt, and the pain of her own betrayal. She tried to deny it again, but I had the proof, and I knew she couldn't wiggle her way out of it. I told her she had to leave, that I was filing for divorce, and I made it clear this wasn't just about breaking up. This was about her facing the consequences of her actions. I wanted her to see that her lies and cheating couldn't just be swept under the rug. I wanted her to remember this moment for the rest of her life. I didn't just want to catch her cheating. I wanted her to understand what she'd lost, what she'd thrown away, and that I was done being the one who got played. That confrontation marked the beginning of the end, but it also set in motion my plan for revenge. I didn't tell her everything I knew yet. I wanted her to feel like she was finally caught, cornered, and powerless. I knew I had evidence now, and I was ready to use it to make sure she paid in a way she'd never expect. The betrayal was raw, and I was determined to make sure she understood exactly how much she'd screwed up. After she left that day, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. I had finally confronted her with everything, proof of her cheating, her lies, her reckless betrayal. But at the same time, I knew this wasn't the end. I had to make this sting, make her regret every second she spent lying and screwing around behind my back. That's when I started executing my plan for revenge, slow and calculated, making sure she felt the full weight of her actions. I kept the hidden cameras rolling, recording every move she made in the days that followed. I also set up a few fake accounts online, pretending to be someone she might be interested in, just to bait her into revealing more of her lies. I knew she'd be reckless, trying to cover her tracks, and sure enough, she started making contact, sending flirty messages, even suggesting they meet again. Seeing her slip into her old habits, I felt a dark satisfaction. She thought she was clever, but I was one step ahead. One night, I arranged a little surprise for her. I sent her a message from what she thought was a new admirer, a guy who claimed he knew about her affair and wanted to meet. I told her I'd set it up for her to finally get everything out in the open, to get her to admit what she'd been doing. She took the bait immediately, texting back eagerly, and I had the whole exchange recorded. Watching her willingly fall for it, I realized she truly believed she was untouchable. That made me angrier. She thought she could cheat and lie without consequences. Then I took it a step further. I contacted Ryan directly, posing as someone who knew everything. I made him believe I was a rival, warning him that Amber was playing him hard and that I was onto their game. I told him I was planning to expose everything and that he should be careful. I wanted them to know I was serious, that I wasn't going to let this slide without some kind of payback. I sent Ryan some of the evidence I had, screenshots, recordings, and told him to think twice before crossing me again. I wanted them both to see that I was not going to be a pushover, that I'd fight back with everything I had. Meanwhile, Amber started losing her cool. She was frantic, calling me, begging me to believe she was innocent, that I was misunderstanding everything. But I didn't answer her calls anymore. I wanted her to feel the mounting pressure, to realize she couldn't just brush me off anymore. Every time I saw her panic, I felt a tiny bit of satisfaction. She was finally realizing that her lies were catching up to her, that she wasn't as clever as she thought she was, not anymore. I was showing her that she couldn't cheat and lie without paying a price. The best part, watching her desperation grow. She'd call me crying, begging for forgiveness, trying to convince me she'd changed, that she'd stopped seeing Ryan. But I didn't buy it. I knew her game now, and I'd made sure she understood she'd lost control, that she'd destroyed what little trust we had left. I wanted her to feel hunted, cornered, and powerless. I wanted her to see that her lies had consequences, and I was just getting started. I wasn't sure how far I'd go yet, but I knew I'd make her regret every second of her betrayal. Whether I stayed married or walked away, she'd never forget what she did. She'd regret ever crossing me. I had all the evidence I needed, and I was preparing to make her pay in ways she'd never see coming. That's what revenge was about, to make sure she understood she'd messed with the wrong guy and that I wasn't going down without a fight. In the end, I didn't do anything rash. I let her think she was still in control, that she had somehow gotten away with everything. But behind the scenes, I was building my case, making sure she felt the heat closing in. I kept records of every call, every message, every lie she told. I even went as far as hiring a private investigator to confirm what I already knew: she was still sneaking around with Ryan, despite all her promises to stop. That was the final nail in the coffin. There was no way I could trust her again, and in my heart, I knew I had to move on. When I finally decided to file for divorce, I did it quietly, with dignity. I didn't tell her how much I'd caught or how much I'd planned. I just let her find out when the papers came in the mail. Watching her reaction, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, like she finally saw herself for what she was. A liar, a cheat, someone who thought she could manipulate her way out of everything. But I wasn't going to let her ruin me. Not anymore. It's been a few months now since she moved out, and honestly, I feel lighter. The rage, the betrayal, the heartbreak, they all still sting, but I'm finally starting to heal. I've learned a lot from this experience. about trusting too easily, about how dangerous lies can be, and most of all, about standing up for myself. I realize now that some things just can't be fixed, some betrayals go too deep, and the only way forward is to cut your losses and rebuild from the ground up. Looking back, I see that this was a brutal lesson but a necessary one. I'm not bitter, just wiser. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar knows that you don't have to accept betrayal as the end. You have the power to take control, to fight back, and to protect your own peace of mind. I've learned that sometimes revenge isn't about causing pain, but about reclaiming your dignity and making the other person see the damage they've done. For anyone in a similar situation, my advice is this: don't ignore the signs. Trust your gut. Gather evidence. Don't let them gaslight you or make you feel crazy. And when you're ready, take control, whether that means confronting, exposing, or walking away. You deserve honesty, respect, and someone who truly values you. I may have lost Amber, but I've gained clarity and strength. And that's worth more than any apology or fleeting moment of happiness she thought she found with Ryan in our own house. That's my story, raw, honest, and real. If I've learned anything from all this, it's that life's too short to stay in a relationship built on lies. I hope it helps someone else see that even in the darkest moments, there's a way to stand up and reclaim your life.